Hi, it's Reverend John at Unity Palo Alto Spiritual Center, and this is our thought for today. I release negative thinking. Let's just take that in for a moment, breathe into that. I release negative thinking. Nothing ever goes right. Have you ever met a person like that? Or perhaps have you ever felt that yourself? I think at one point in time or another, we've all had similar feelings. I'd like to read a letter out of the Release and Renew booklet that we're using for our thoughts these days. Here's what it says. For many years, I worked in a job that left me feeling both unhappy and depleted. I allowed that unhappiness to seep into other areas of my life, often robbing me of joy. I allowed my negative thinking to tell me that there were no other options, or I'd never have other opportunities. Before long, negative thinking was all I focused on. Of course, my negative thoughts and words were reflected in my life. Eventually, I began to realize my unhappiness was a result of my consistent negative thinking. I began to ask myself questions. Did I really want to continue my life steeped in that type of thinking? Didn't I realize I was much more than that? That letter was inspired by the book of James, chapter 1, verse 2. My brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of any kind, consider it nothing but joy. Well, let's take a nice deep breath after we read that idea of I release negative thinking. Because I think one of our challenges is we don't want to use this idea from the standpoint of washing over something that's deeply buried or some issue that's come up and just say, no, I just can't think negatively, right? That's not really what we're talking about. What we're talking about here are the habitual patterns that we have, those automatic behaviors when something comes up that automatically elicits or draws forth a negative thought, a negative connotation, or a negative belief. That's what we want to become aware of today. So today, just search your day as you're going through the day. Just be aware of your thoughts and start to think, how often am I coming up with a negative thought right out of the box? Now, it's important we can look behind the thought at the feelings, and the feelings are fine. It's not the feeling that's the problem. If we ever feel a sense, if we ever have that negative thought, it's very often being driven by a deeper sense of loss, a deeper sense of grief or sadness, or something that's buried beneath it. And those are, when we're having those feelings, it's important to recognize, this isn't, what's happening out there, right? This isn't what the person said on that webinar. This isn't what that email was talking about or what I heard on the phone. This isn't that diagnosis or this experience in my life that's causing this. There might be an underlying sadness that's just below the surface. And the gift in that, in the self-realization of that, is that we can then look beneath that and say, there's the belief that we can heal, that we can change, that we can release. There's the wound that we might want to consider doing some healing around. There's something that happened that is really kind of bubbled up underneath us. So when we do discover that we're having those habitual negative thoughts, that if that's the start out of the gate, right? If we see something or hear something that we don't like, especially during this time of the pandemic when we are locked away, as so many of us are. We haven't yet received our second vaccination, or for me, let alone our first. And yet there's so much hope, and yet we're still told that you need to slow down a little bit, take a step back, and just breathe into it. A lot of negative thoughts may flow from that, or may get negative assumptions. So just be aware of those thoughts, and to see if it's a negative behavior pattern, if it's something that keeps popping up, if there's a different way to look at it, just notice it today. And then as you notice it, release the thought, release the belief. Curiosity is always one of my favorite tools when I'm in that state. I wonder what's going on within me. I wonder how I could look at this a little bit differently. I wonder what my life would be like if I wasn't holding on to this thought or this belief and catastrophizing it and retelling the story and creating new stories about it. Anybody good at that? So when we find ourselves there, just take a deep, gentle breath. And as you exhale, release the thought. You might even say, I release this thought, this belief. And I'm curious what else I can think, what else I can feel, what else is there. Where's the joy? Breathing with you today. Love and blessings. Namaste.